Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy Flores. I'm an attorney. I'm a former legislator, former candidate for lieutenant governor here in Nevada. In 2010, me and my 3 Hispanic female colleagues became the first Latinas ever elected to the state legislature in the history of Nevada. Just last year, I became the first Hispanic candidate ever for the office of lieutenant governor in the history of Nevada. But I wasn't always these things. In fact, I was the complete opposite. So let me take you back to the beginning. And don't worry, I'm not that old. And we have a time limit, so we're good. So I was 2 years old when my dad moved his very large family to Las Vegas from East LA. I have 10 surviving siblings, brothers and sisters. 2 of them came after we moved to Las Vegas. We moved to Las Vegas because of a family tragedy. 2 of my oldest brothers, one of my dad's firstborn sons, were murdered around the same time because of drug and gang violence. So he picked most of us up and moved us to Las Vegas. Now, we didn't have much. We grew up really poor, didn't have a whole lot, but we made do. It actually wasn't until my mother left my family when I was 9 years old that things really started to get difficult for me. And things went downhill rather quickly. Despite me being enrolled in gifted and talented education classes and doing very well in school, when I lost that support at home, I didn't have it anywhere else. So things went from bad to worse. I started to purposely fail all of my advanced placement exams. And when that happened, no one noticed. No one got involved, teachers didn't call, no one went to my house. So, being surrounded by lots of negative and not a whole lot of positive, I got involved with the wrong crowd. I very quickly started getting in trouble. By 15, I was on juvenile parole. By 17, I was a high school dropout. All of my brothers and sisters, except for one, had dropped out of high school. All of my sisters were young mothers. One of my sisters was 14 and got pregnant with twins. So these were the kinds of role models and support that I had available to me. So the logical next question, of course, that I always get is, well, what happened? What was that moment? What did it for you that made you realize that you had to be different? And it was a couple of different people and different moments, but the very first moment, that first kind of aha moment for me, was when I was leaving the correctional facility. I had just served a sentence of 9 months, and there was this myth that went around the facility that if you were leaving and you looked back, that you would be back. It's very Sodom and Gomorrah now that I think about it. You know, like, I certainly don't want to be an inmate the rest of my life, and I definitely don't want to be a pillar of salt. So I trained my sight on that headrest as I was being transported in that van back to Las Vegas. And I wouldn't let myself look at anything else. My eyes burned, they watered, but I refused because I was like, there's no way I can't. I don't want this life for me, but what am I gonna do? How am I gonna be different? I'm going back into the very same environment that I came from, the same dysfunctional family, the same friends, the same neighborhood. I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I know I have to try. So there I go, and then another thing happened. I got this incredible person that came into my life, my parole officer. And she was this very stereotypical law enforcement Italian woman, very matter-of-fact, scary, put the fright of God in you at all the appropriate times. She had this charm on her necklace. It were golden handcuffs that gleamed ever so appropriately to remind you that the real-life version was very close by. But she was the first person who treated me like a kid in a bad environment instead of just a bad kid. And she was the first person who I thought really cared about me. And inevitably, I ended up getting in more trouble. I, again, was back in that same situation, same friends, same everything, but she did what others hadn't, and she tried to understand what I was going through. So the next big moment came when I tried to go live with my biological mother because I wanted to try to get into a better environment, a better space. Well, there's a reason why she's left. It was not a good idea. So eventually, we ended up getting into a fist fight. She called the police, and she tried to get my parole revoked. So as I was sitting in the back of that police car, arrested, heading back to juvenile detention, I thought to myself, well, I tried. I really, really gave this my best effort, but obviously this is not on the cards for me. I'm going back, I'm going to end up in prison, I am going to be what everyone else is that I know. And I really thought my life was over. So I get taken to the detention facility, processed as you usually are, go into court, jumpsuit, shackles, belly chain, wrist, ankles. And Leslie's there. Leslie's my parole officer. Which, by the way, everyone always asks, yes, we still keep in touch. And every so often I tell people I feel the need to check in and be like, Leslie, I'm leaving the state, just want to let you know. So she's there. And I, of course, expect her to say, I recommend her parole be revoked. What instead she says is, Your Honor, I recommend that Lucy Flores be released to the custody of her father. And that moment was the moment that changed the course of my life. It was that moment that I felt that this woman, a saint in my opinion, gave me a second chance at life. And so I knew at that time that I had to do whatever was necessary to try to be better, to do something different. And this is not a Lifetime movie. Things did not get better overnight. I stumbled, but she had set me on a new path. I ended up successfully completing parole, but I did end up dropping out of high school and really getting into that situation that I was accustomed to, that you were just going to work the rest of your life. But at the very least, I was not doing the things that I was in the past. Well, fast forward, a couple more role models, mentors, people who came into my life, and eventually I realized that education was my only option. So I got my GED, I enrolled in community college, transferred out to University of Southern California, go Trojans. Came back to my hometown of Las Vegas for law school, and go Rebels. So I guess for those watching at home, you should know I'm at UNR, the northern institution, which is just as good. And then got to work. I came back to Las Vegas a completely new and different person. And so I decided to run for office in my very last year of law school. So I finished up my last year of law school, ran for office, graduated, got elected, sat for my bar during the first legislative session, and then started practicing thereafter. And just saying it kind of gets me tired sometimes, but I'm not an overachiever, I promise. I had a lot of making up to do. So when I was in college, one of the things that really stuck with me was this phrase that someone told me. They said, Lucy, just keep your eye on the prize. And I'm a very visual person, so every single time that there was something happening that I felt like I couldn't go on, when I was in college, I was so broke, I was so poor, I didn't know how I was going to eat most days. I got really good at becoming interested in things like, like Rubik's Cube Club of America, because they had pizza. So I'm like, this is great, how do you do it? And you figured out ways, but there were so many times when I wanted to give up that I felt like this is too hard, I can't. I can just go back and get a job and just be normal. And then I would think, keep your eye on the prize. I would envision this tunnel, and at the end of that tunnel, there was this very bright and shiny, beautiful light, and that if I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, that eventually I would get there. And so I learned to start applying that vision to absolutely everything that happens in my life, to any challenge, big or small, one foot in front of the other, and eventually you make it to that light. In Nevada, I've always found that gambling analogies are really appropriate. So pick a game, blackjack, poker, go fish. It's my personal favorite. and you get handed a cards. You get handed a hand. And sometimes it's a really awesome one, and sometimes it's a really awful one, and one that feels completely and totally unfair. But the only thing that you can do at that point then is to figure out what you're going to do with that hand. And that is the way that I look at life, that you deal with what you got, and then you make the best of it. When I was 13 years old, one of my very best friends at the time, I witnessed him getting stabbed by a rival gang member. That's not fair. It's not fair that any young child in our urban or non-urban communities in our country should have to witness violence of that kind. So while we work on changing those policies that are going to improve the lives of those young people, that are going to improve the lives of the people in our community, while we work on improving and changing those policies, at the same time, we teach them that no matter what happens, that no matter what awful hand gets dealt to you, that you can still make it, that you can overcome whatever challenge is presented to you if you just keep your eye on the prize. But there's another point to be made. And that point is that while each and every single one of us can overcome whatever obstacle and whatever challenge exists in your life, that at the same time, your words and your actions and the things that you do and say very well could be reshuffling the deck for someone else. Because never in the time that Leslie, my parole officer, was working with me and understanding the situation that I was in, did she ever envision that I would be standing here on this stage today. So you never know when you very well could be changing the outcome of someone's life. And we could end up with that person who finally cures cancer, or that engineer that creates the newest gadget that changes the world, or maybe just a politician who wants to try to improve things and leave this world a little better than she found it. Thank you.